This is the Less Insurance Dependence podcast show with my good friend Gary Takas and myself, Narain Arulraja.
We appreciate your listenership, your time, and most of all, we appreciate your intention to reduce insurance dependence in your practice. Our goal is to provide information that will help you successfully reduce insurance dependence and convert your practice into a thriving and profitable dental practice that provides you with personal, professional, and financial satisfaction.
Welcome to the Less Insurance Dependence podcast. I'm your host, Lester D. Alvis. This podcast is designed to help dental professionals build profitable, patient-focused practices with less stress and less reliance on insurance. Before we begin, a quick message from our sponsors who are sponsoring this episode. Equa Marketing is offering a complimentary marketing strategy meeting to help practices attract high-quality patients and grow through strong online visibility. You can book a complimentary session at lessinsurancedependence.com/marketing-strategy-meeting. If you're looking for guidance on building a thriving insurance-independent practice, you can also schedule a complimentary coaching strategy meeting with Gary Takas at thrivingdentist.com/CSM. Today, I'm honored to welcome a very special guest, and that is Dr. Michael Sonick. Dr. Sonick is an internationally recognized clinician, educator, and thought leader in implant dentistry and practice leadership. His work has helped countless dentists elevate their clinical care and build practices centered on value, trust, and long-term success. And in today's episode, it's titled as Building a High-Value Dental Practice Beyond Insurance. So we will explore how clinical excellence, leadership, and patient education allow dentists to move away from volume-based insurance-driven models. So Dr. Sonick, thank you for joining us. We're so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and look forward to our next few minutes together.
Amazing. So let's begin with the big picture. How does focusing on value over volume help practices reduce their dependence on insurance?
Well, that's a great question, because it really is all about value, isn't it? I mean, one of my mentors and the founder of Kane Waters management company, leadership company, which is one of the largest leadership companies and financial advisors in dentistry. They have over 3,000 clients. Daryl Kane founded it, probably 40 years ago. He's recently just stepped down as chairman. And patients really, he says, patients really do not care about what the cost is if they receive a tremendous value, because the value you receive is more important than the money you spend. And if you think about all the experiences that you've had in your life, it's not always transactional. And oftentimes in dentistry, we make it a very transactional relationship. It's going to cost $1,000, and this is the procedure, as opposed to we're going to take good care of you. We're going to get you healthier. We're going to improve your aesthetics. We're going to give you great function. You're going to feel good. And so people really don't want to buy products for a dentist. What we end up doing is we end up selling products because of the basis of the way we were taught in dental school. And that's a whole long story. And we'll talk about this in a second, about insurance. So value is the most important thing in any transaction. And I use the word transaction in a negative way, that we're buying something, but that's what we're doing. We're professionals. We're selling our services. But people really don't want to just buy something. What they want is a relationship. So you build the value by developing that strong relationship, and it's all based upon trust. And when you have really good trust between the provider and the patient, and that's whether you're buying a car, whether you're going in, you're going to, buy a hot tub for your home, you're going onto a cruise, or you're going to a medical appointment, that's what you really want. Now today, after this, I have 2 doctor's appointments with physicians. I don't know if the value is probably going to be there. One's going to be a new one. I'll see how he is. Right. So far, probably won't be great because he's from a large corporation. And the other one I've met, and he was great, but he's getting churned up and beaten up by the corporation. But he doesn't care if I pay him or not, because it's all based upon insurance. I'm going to go there, and he's going to look at his watch at 17 minutes into the appointment, because he only has till 20 minutes. That's it. And he's going to dismiss me. And if I have more questions, I get dismissed. And the last time I was there with this young doctor, who's a brilliant cardiologist, he's been helping me for many years, but I see he's in his 40s, he's burnt out. And I said to him, I said, "What's that on the screen?" And it was a CAT scan and of my heart, looking at the arteries, and I was interested. And I said, "I really don't understand what I'm looking at." And you know what he said, Lester? He says, "You don't have to understand." He goes, "I do." And what he did was he minimized me as a human being. He looked at me as like, "You're okay. I get it. Trust me or don't trust me. I don't really care because you're going in 3 minutes." And I saw him look at his watch. And this is a guy I've known for 7 or 8 years, but I know what's happening. He's getting beaten up. He's getting beaten up by the system. His stress level is very high because he's in his mid-40s. He's got 2 kids. He's got a mortgage, and he only has 20 minutes per person. You know, in our practice, I don't look at my patients as procedures. I look at them as individuals that I want to help. So I think that's really important. We could talk some more about how that all occurred, you know, if you like.
Yeah. That's a great foundation. How value is important, and it sets a strong foundation to our conversation now, and how it changes the business model. Now, from your experience, what mindset shift must dentists make before they can successfully reduce reliance on insurance?
Well, I started my practice, and I'll tell you a story about my dental education. So I went to the University of Connecticut School of Dental Medicine. I graduated in 1979, and the dean was Harold Lowe, who a lot of your listeners may know, but a lot of them may not know. But he's probably one of the most prominent periodontists of all times. He's the father of modern periodontology. He's from Oslo, Norway. And he told us the first day of school that we are now going to be called doctor, which was unusual back in the 70s and 80s because the dental school education was more like going in the military. You know, I'm the professor, you're the student, you listen to me, do what we tell you. But he wasn't like that. He goes, "I'm going to give you immediate respect. You're going to be a doctor. But you're not doctors, not dentists, you're physicians of the oral cavity, which means that you have to take care of the whole patient." So in dental school, the model in most schools in America at that time was you go 4 years, you go do 2 years of medical school and some science, and then you start going into the clinic and you have to do 50 crowns and maybe 150 cavities and restorations and so many extractions and periodontal surgeries and dentures. But at University of Connecticut, they gave us not a lot of requirements. We did not have to do that many procedures. So when we graduated, we did not have the same amount of experience doing the procedures as other dental schools. For example, my daughter went to the University of Texas School of Dental Dentistry and San Antonio. And she did probably 3 times as many restorations as an undergraduate as I did. So why did we do less? Well, we weren't allowed to trade patients. So if we had a patient, we had to do everything that patient needed dentally. But before we can even do the dentistry, we'd have to get them periodontally healthy. And so he taught us about the disease model of dentistry, the disease model of medicine, and prevention. So we had to get the patients periodontally healthy before we would do a restoration, because if we did a restoration without good periodontal health, that would most likely fail. And we had to put the patients in recall. So if that patient needed, let's say, 10 restorations, and you had already had your requirements done, and they needed perio, and you had your requirements done with that, you still had to do the perio and the restorations. You know, you couldn't trade that patient for, let's say, a root canal. And that's what happens in dental schools. People trade patients like baseball cards. You know, do you have a root canal? Yeah, I got a crown. Can I trade? And that's not a really good way to treat humans because they become monetized. They become procedures, not patients. And in my book, Treating People, Not Patients, it's all about developing strong, in-depth human connection. And we're not taught that in dental school. We weren't given 1 hour on hospitality. We weren't given 1 hour on human connection. We weren't given 1 hour on managing a patient with fear. We weren't giving 1 hour on providing value. We were giving thousands of hours on biology and microbiology, on how to prepare a tooth, on how to extract a tooth, on vacations, but that's not what we're taught in school. So Harold Lowe taught us to treat the whole patient, and that made me a lot less procedural oriented. So how do you differentiate yourself? You look at the patient not as a procedure, but as a human being that needs help. When most patients come into our practices, they are filled with anxiety, with fear. They're scared to death. And so I tell every patient on their first visit, I tell them the 2 things. One, I say, I congratulate them for coming in because I know it's a big deal. Because my average patient is a 65-year-old patient that has had years of neglect and bad care and needs a full mouth rehabilitation or something like that. And not all of them, but a lot do. And I say, you're in the right place. I want to make them feel comfortable. And I said, we're going to diagnose a number of things today, which I call problems, but I'm going to immediately give you a solution. I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to give you a future that's brighter than your past, where your life is going to be better. And 3 things are going to happen if you go through treatment. 1, I'm going to get you healthier. 2, I'm going to improve function. And 3, we're going to improve your aesthetics if you have aesthetic things. And I talk to their feelings because people really don't buy crowns. What they want to buy is a better life. And so that's what I try to do. So by focusing on them and giving them a better life, by the time I'm done, and by this only takes 90 seconds. I'm talking longer, but 90 seconds, they trust me. Now, there's a lot of those things happen before they even came into the office. A lot of them happen with the first phone call, with looking at my website, with the referral of a trusted patient. Yesterday, I'm getting older. I am now in my early 70s. And so I don't work with my colleagues that are my age anymore. They're all retiring. They're all burnt out. I still have a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. So, and I have 2 young partners, and a lot of the younger people are now working with them. And I've also turned over a lot of my referrals to build their practice. So a lot of my patients come from people who know me, people who go on my website. So yesterday I saw 2 patients that just knew me, and both of them one of them needed a complete mouth of it. Both of them needed a tremendous amount of implant work and bone grafting. And they found me sort of on their own or because they knew me. And so when they came in, they didn't have insurance. Neither of them did. And they both needed a tremendous amount of work, probably about $30,000 to $40,000 worth of work. And they both said yes. Yeah. Our case acceptance rate, or my personal case acceptance rate, is 92%. My partner's at 83% with no insurance. And that's because people do not get that kind of time and attention and care from many other people. We've distinguished ourselves by being present with the patient, by looking at them eye to eye, knee to knee, as my friend Bob Levine says, and giving them the care that they need. Because people come in hopeless. And what do they say when they come in? Well, what does my insurance cover? And we have a way, we have conversations that we have to discuss that. And so if I did what the insurance would cover, I'd be giving them the wrong treatment. I said, yeah, I can do that. We'll submit your insurance, but we don't have to. And you can interrupt me anytime if you want to ask a question, but I think I know where you want me to go with this. If I take insurance, let's say my fee is $100, okay? And the insurance pays, let's say they pay $70, okay? So I'm making $70, but my overhead is $50. So if I charge $100 and my overhead is $50, I'll make $50 on a patient. If I charge $70, I just lost $30. Okay, so now I'm making $20. So my overhead is now 80%. So I'm filling my chair. I'm doing treatment that really is not in the patient's best interest. And I'm reducing my profitability from $50, to $20. Or maybe if I get 80%, $50, to maybe I'm reducing my profit from $50 to $30 or something. But I'm reducing it not just by $20 because my overhead is in there. And so a lot of people will fill the chair. I know a young dentist that just opened a practice and her hygienist makes $65 an hour, but the insurance only pays $55 for a cleaning. And unless she stacks the procedures and puts in for procedures that they may not need, like additional fluoride treatments and an exam, whatever, she's not going to be able to make a living. And that creates a tremendous amount of stress. So the stress level goes up, profitability goes down, and the quality of treatment drops. So when I opened up my practice, I came out of dental school, 79. I worked as a general dentist for a few years. I went back and did my residency, and I opened up in my hometown. I was in many different communities. I was in Manhattan for a while. I was in Atlanta, Georgia. I decided to come back to Fairfield, Connecticut. It wasn't the best move financially because there were 5 periodontists in Fairfield. Fairfield has a town of 65,000 people. There were 5 periodontists within 200 yards of my practice. So everyone says don't open there. But I wanted to be there. It was 200 yards from my high school. Not only did I want to be there, I decided I wasn't going to take insurance. So on day one practice with no patients and $400,000 in debt, which was a lot in 1985, I opened up a 3-chair practice. And my first month, Lester, do you know what I made my first month? Not made. Do you know what I took in? Take a guess. My first month, $20. I took in $20 my first month. For the year, I increased it. I took in $35,000. My overhead was $90. My second year, I took in $90,000. My overhead was $125. And my third year, I did $130,000 for the year. Okay, and I didn't make any money my first 3 years in practice. So how did I support it? I worked in the mall and White Plains, New York, 2 days a week just to support a private practice. And today, I do right now in 1 week, what I did in a year back then, actually more than that. So what I produce on a daily basis is unbelievable compared to what I did. And my overhead has dropped significantly. And I've taken on 2 partners since then, and they both weren't busy when they started. They both said to me, I want to take insurance. I say, don't, because then you become a slave. Not only do you make less money, but you do a less quality job, and your integrity has to be managed from insurance companies. Now, I'm saying this to an audience where 90% of you are taking insurance, and you're scared to drop it. So my suggestion is, you just play with it, get rid of sometimes you have to take it just to fill the chair, but start to look at your profitability because of it. Because I do believe you can, and it doesn't matter what location you're in. I'm in Fairfield, Connecticut, which is next door. Bridgeport is 2 miles from me, which is the poorest city in the state. And we get patients from Bridgeport, and we get them come up from New York City and Greenwich. They may I always say they can take the bus or the limo. They all get the same diagnosis and treatment planning. And I do believe that you can have a phenomenally successful fee-for-service practice, but you have to do a few things. You have to give tremendously good quality. You have to be a good dentist, okay? You have to practice with integrity. You have to take your time and do a comprehensive exam and diagnosis, which doesn't happen in most offices. They come from the hygienist. And you have to be able to give the patient over-the-top communication where they feel cared for, where they trust you, and their anxiety will drop. So I know I said just a lot right there, but I believe it. And I probably give one or two lectures a week or courses a week on this topic. And, the successful practices are the one that can be there for the patients to do a comprehensive examination and treat them comprehensively.
Exactly. I mean, you are a living example of how things were done. So, I mean, I love how you broke it down with all the first impression, how you do it, and how you took it from there. And now everything is we do need to have the right mindset. The next thing is the role. What role does leadership play in guiding the team and patients through a transition away from an insurance-driven dentistry?
It's everything, right? I mean, without leadership, nothing gets done, right? I just came back from a cruise. There was a captain on the cruise. He came down and said hello. He was. I wasn't steering that ship, okay? Nor were the people who were cooking, nor were the people who were taking care of the deck or making the beds and all that. There was somebody else doing it. And how many courses do you think dentists get in leadership in dental school? None. We're taught procedures and we're taught biology, which you need to know. Okay, but it's only part of it. You have to have a team. And I always say, there are 4 things that we look at in practice. We look at the individual, being me or my employee, whatever they are. We look at the team. We look at our patients and the referrals. Every team needs a strong leader. I'm naturally a leader, and that's just my DNA. Most dentists are not. In high school, I was president of the student council. I run all the reunions. I have 4 or 5 study clubs that I run. I like doing it. Each year we have a reunion for my dental school class and medical school class. I run that. I've been doing that for 45 years. If I don't do it, it's not going to get done unless someone steps up to do it. The problem is that is an absence of leadership in a lot of dental practices, actually in a lot of businesses. Lester, go to a grocery store. Where do you live, Lester?
I live in Canada, Mississauga.
All right, so you go to a grocery store. If you have Whole Foods there, or if you have a local one, you go in there, and if you're getting really good care, if you walk into the produce section, you go, "Where's the cilantro?" And the guy goes, "It's right over here. We just got some fresh thing in it." Okay. Now, if you walk in and you go, "Where's cilantro?" and you go, "What?" cilantro, what's that? And they look at you like you're crazy because they don't know what it is. Or if they're rude to you, the first thing that I always do when I'm in any business, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a grocery store, whether I'm working for furniture and looking for a mattress, anything, going to an airline, okay, we're a little stuck on airlines because there's no competition. It's hard to get on airlines now. So they're not always that kind. But if I go into any store and I'm not getting good service, I say, where's the leader? And I look for them, and I look for the manager. I usually find them. I can see them walking around. They're usually kicking something, slamming doors and that, and it comes from the top. So there's a really good book I'm going to recommend to your listeners. It's by Simon Sinek, who's well known as the guy who says, what's your why? And it's Leaders Eat Last. It's a phenomenal book. I've listened to it twice. I've listened to it once and read it. And it really breaks down leadership into a lot of different aspects. Number one, what makes a good leader, but also what the impact is biologically on the leadership person. What does it do to your dopamine? What does it do to your serotonin? How does it change the way you feel? Because what a good leader can change dramatically. So I always break it down, as I mentioned to you, and the human being that's in a practice, and it could be the leader, it could be a teammate, it could be the vendor. I look at the team that makes up the practice, because the team is myself, and the hygienist and assistants, but it's also the vendors and the people that work on a practice, and there's our patients, etc. That all has to be well coordinated if we're going to give excellent care. The most important group of people in my practice is not my patients, it's my team. And the leader has to take care of the team with the vision of giving good care to the practices. So what the leader does, and if your practices don't have it, you really want to develop a series of values. And almost every institution has them. Now they're called core values, and you want a mission statement or a statement of purpose. So unless that is defined, everyone's lost. And as the leader of my own practice, the one who's been there for 42 years, built the practice from nothing. We now have, we now are open 5 days a week. I have, there's 3 periodontists in a practice. We have 5 hygienists, and we have 8 dental assistants, and we have 25 people from 11 different countries. We speak 7-8 different languages in the practice, including Canada. And that whole team has to be cohesive and coherent. So unless the leadership is there to guide the team, and to guide the team means they have to know what their responsibilities are and what's expected of them. And it's a lot of work to be a good leader. So let's say you're not a good leader. Let's say you're listening to this and you go, I hate talking to the team. I just want to do the procedures. That's fine. It won't serve you as well if you're a good leader. But if you're not a good leader, you have to realize that it's important to have good leadership there. So you have to hire them, and you have to empower them. I found that I've empowered my partner, Dr. Ma. He is a leader. I have a younger associate, Dr. Spencer. She is learning to lead. She's only been there 2 years. It's hard to lead after 2 years. I have an office manager leads, and in each department has a leader. It's very hard to get people to want to lead. So that's my job. So my job in the practice is to rehire everybody every day. You heard that right, rehire them. Because my patients come because I have a great team, but my team has to come because they're motivated to give good care. Did you know that the average length of time that someone stays in a job today is 18 months? And that 70% of your employees are looking online while they're at work for another job. So every day I have to make sure that they're happy. And like I've had issues in my office, like we all do. Somebody leaves and all of a sudden saying, well, maybe I should leave. Somebody left to work at home. They want to have a baby. Now I heard some rumblings like, I want to work at home. So I realized I got to step it up. So I talked to everybody individually. I walked in, I go, how you doing? How you doing? And then one person said to me, we're not making as much money as we did the year before. I go, why not? Because I'm working really hard. I'm coming early and staying late. I go, that doesn't make sense because your hourly wage is up. So I looked at the numbers and they worked 100 less hours last year than they did the year before that. I said, you're not making less, you're working less, which is okay, but you'll make less money. So once they saw that, by the way, it wasn't just that person. It was the 2 or 3 other people in the administrative. All of a sudden, the administrative team says they're underpaid. Well, my team is paid in the top 5% of my area. So I met with them. I showed them the numbers, and they go, "Okay, sorry." I said, this is coming from somewhere else." They go, "Right. My cat got sick, and I spent $9,000 on a cat, and you have some financial security." I said, "That's okay. You can work as many hours as you want. Matter of fact, work 5 days a week. Most people work 4. I said, work 50 hours a week. You're going to make time and a half on that, 10 hours over. And I said, I'll give you an extra 3 hours just for working a fifth day because we always can use more people. So there's a $100 bonus plus time and a half. It won't take much longer before you're making a lot more money if you want to work. So that's an example how leadership works. I have to be there to guide the team. I have to also be the one that is a role model for them. When packages come in, I got to pick them up and bring them to the basement. I don't say, hey, get those packages in the basement. I'll help unpack. You know, if we just snowed here, I make sure there's some salt spread. Now, other people do it too, but they see me doing it. You know, we have the new mayor of New York City was out there shoveling snow, trying to get cars. He wanted to show that he was a role model. Is he really making a difference doing it? No, but he's out there saying, I'm in the snow too. Because people look at your leaders. My team is looking at me all the time. If I come in 10 minutes late for the morning meeting and I'm in a bad mood and I'm not showered, my hair's not combed, and I start yelling at this person because yesterday this person was late and you didn't collect the money, so-and-so, I never, ever draw attention to the negative. I always talk about the positive. And if there's a problem, I have a whole strategy for that. So leadership, if you don't have good leadership, you can't have a great organization. And how often do you see good leadership? Rarely in any organization. I work with a lot of different companies. I work with a lot of different dental offices. Every time there's a problem in any organization, I look to the leader. And if the leader is there and they're not leading, that's the problem. And oftentimes, every leader struggles. Every leader has to work really hard. You know, in the military, I get a lot of the ways I learn how to lead is by reading a lot of the military literature. You know, the voice of the bullfrog, you know, admirals that take ships that were the worst in the Navy to make them the best in the Navy. It's hard work. You got to get that down on your hands and knees. And if you're the leader of the company or if you're owner of the company or if you're a dentist, have to do it. But a lot of dentists don't own the companies. 35% of you work for DSOs or young associates. So what are you going to do there? Well, you bring it to the organization, say, I'd like to do this. And you bring the value that you're going to bring to that practice to the people that are above you. Say, I can really improve things if we do this, this, and this, and it won't cost you anything because I'm going to do it. So my daughter just opened up her own practice 2 weeks ago, Becky Sonick. She worked for many different people, and she was very frustrated because she has the same philosophy as I do, but she was working for other people. She's not a periodontist, she's a restorative dentist. And I said to her, I go, just create unbelievable value. So she started, bringing in smoothies for the team that she wasn't paying. Somebody else was because she was employees. And guess what? They'd stay later. They clean their instruments. Give them a training protocol. You do it. Okay. And it pays tremendous benefits. So leadership is a very difficult skill. It's one of the more difficult ones that I've had to learn over the years, but it's one that has paid me back, time and time again. The dividends are unbelievable. However, it's just like going to the gym. I've been going to the gym my whole life. I don't go to the gym for a week. Guess what? I'm less strong. I don't feel like going. Okay. I've been leading for years. If I don't do it for a week or two, and I do this, by the way, I play games. I sometimes will take light bulbs and I'll unscrew them. And so that they're no longer in, I'll see how long it takes somebody to find the light bulb. And then sometimes 2 or 3 weeks will go by and nobody will see the light bulbs out. I'll say, hey, you want to check that light bulb? And they go, yeah, I'll change it. I go, why don't you try screwing it in first? They screw it in. They go, oh. And so I will do little things like that just to say, this is what we got to do. And I always make it about the team. I always say we do this as a team. I don't blame any one person for not doing the light bulb. Sometimes I'll turn on a light bulb where we all are. I don't do that often, but it's just an example. I want to see, or if I see a piece of gauze there, how long is that going to sit on the floor before somebody picks it up? And everyone knows what these are. And all the principles of leadership are written down in a manual in the office. Not that anybody reads the manual, but they're there. And there's always a protocol. And what leadership's there for is to provide a vision for the team so that they know where to go. Is to give them what we call the banks of the river. All right. You can't go in or out. And people love leadership because most people want to know what they do. Most people want to be good. Nobody comes to work saying, I want to be a lousy employee. No one comes to work saying, I want to have a bad day. Most people come to work saying, all right, I want this to work out well, but my boss is always in such a bad mood and I'm supposed to get paid on Thursday and I got to ask him on Friday because I have to check. That's a terrible, terrible leadership. So exactly. I'm very passionate about this, as you could tell.
Yeah. I mean, leadership is what holds everything together. If there's no leadership, everything crumbles down.
Exactly.
And now, what is one mistake dentists make when trying to elevate their practice too quickly or when they too get ahead?
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake that dentists, or forget dentists, any human being wants is not creating a vision and not creating a proper timeline and cutting corners to get there quicker. And I remember there was a moment here. I'll tell you one mistake. It's financial. Because most dentists today, most people get out of school with, a few $100,000 in debt, and so they're financially stressed and they put the money first. And I remember one of my co-residents was very successful at Emory, and he went into private practice, and he left, and his patients followed him in private practice. So they're paying dental school fees, and they followed this nice guy to practice. He opened up in Marietta, Georgia. And in a few months, his patients started coming back to the practice. And I go, well, how come you left this periodontist? He's charming, he's nice, he's eloquent, he's a good surgeon. They go, well, he changed. So he went from being a resident to being fee for service. Or I don't know if he was fee for service, it didn't matter. And he started to look at his patients differently. I said, what happened? He goes, he looked at me differently. I go, how? He goes, it was in his eyes. And he says he had cash register eyes. So when he went into private practice, he no longer looked at them as a human being because he was charming, and when it didn't really matter, because it didn't matter if you got paid or didn't when you're a resident. But when you're in private practice, the money mattered, and the patients felt it. And I've always thought, whenever I was talking to patients, I don't want them to think I'm looking at them with cash register eyes. I always want to show them value. And early in my career, I was financially in tremendous amount of debt. And then we bought the building. And at one point in my career, I was $2.5 million in debt, dental debt, because I built this building, I renovated it, and I had to make $150,000 a month just to pay my overhead and do everything. I put myself in a bad situation. That was 25 years ago. And during that period of time, there are many opportunities I had. I could say, you got to get this done, or if you don't get it done within the next week, you're going to have an abscess, and I wouldn't travel. I never did that. In my first year in practice, this gentleman needed some periodontal surgery, or I recommended it to him. It was 1985. His name was Hansen. And he said to me, he goes, it's June now. He goes, I'll do the surgery this year if you think I really need it, but I'd like my insurance to kick in. Do you mind if I wait till January? And at that moment, it was tremendous debt. It was my first year in practice. And I paused for a second, and I thought about that. And for some reason, it was like a vision came down from the heavens and says, Mike, what you say to Hansen today is going to impact your entire life. What road do you want to go down? A road of integrity or a road of quick success, but lowering your integrity? He goes, do the right thing. So I said to Hans, I said, we can wait till next year. It's not a problem. Now, of course, it's not a problem if you have 6 millimeter or 7 millimeter pockets and you wait 6 months to get your teeth cleaned. Your teeth aren't going to fall out. Well, Hans left, and I was treating his wife. And his wife came in 2 months later, and I for cleaning, I go, how's Hans? And she said he died of a massive heart attack 3 weeks ago. Oh. That was 2 months after I told him he could wait the next year. And when that happened, it was like another message I was getting. I go, if you did not do the right thing, how guilty would you feel if Hans had died in your chair, or if he did the treatment and he died after and you lied to him, and you sort of would follow you around. So how can I go back to your question of mistakes? There is no shortcut to success. Everybody that's successful, whether you are Michael Jordan or the Beatles, have worked their butt off for many years, doing it. Now, right now, I'm creating another career in teaching and education, which I've been doing for 2 years. I've been an educator for 40 years, but it's in the residency programs at school. I've written 7 books on periodontics and, all those other things. But this topic we're talking about now, there aren't too many periodontists or surgeons talking about customer service and hospitality. And I really want to change the way healthcare is delivered. Medicine, dentistry, no matter where you are. I want to be able to make it more customer centric, because it is as important, if not more important, than doing, scaling root planning, extracting a tooth, doing Invisalign. Those things are important, but also this other aspect. There's no shortcut to success. Take it slow, all right, and do it right way. And I guarantee you, if you follow the principles of integrity, of proper treatment, which almost nobody is doing, you'll have a niche practice and you'll be very successful. And I'm watching my daughter doing it now. She bought a practice. She started literally 2 weeks ago. So it's really interesting for me to watch her, because she has a lot of the same concepts I do. But she bought a practice that really hasn't been, the dentist that was running it wasn't really involved in it. He was doing sleep dentistry. He wasn't involved in restorative. They weren't doing probings and x-rays. They were 100% insurance. And the practice is not doing well, but it's in a phenomenal location. It has the bones. And she is struggling with this her first 2 weeks. She goes, I want to drop insurance. I said, no, you're going to have to hang with it for about 6 to 8 months because patients are not getting the care that they want, but she has to work. She has to tiptoe that. So a lot of you on this podcast also have to tiptoe through that. But if you do it slowly, and let's say maybe every Wednesday you go to the office when it's your day off, you go, I'm just going to take fee-for-service patients that day and do it ideally. All of a sudden that Wednesday will be full, and then Thursday, Friday, because they're not going to get that type of care anywhere else. And I did it with my partner, Dr. Ma. He is booked 4 months, I'm booked 4 months ahead. He's booked like 2 to 3 months ahead. And I'm doing it with Dr. Spencer, who's been with me for a year and a half. She's now getting busy, all without insurance. And all doing it. I would let both of them treat me because they practice with very, very high integrity. So the biggest mistake that they made is they put the money in front of the value, and they cut corners. And it's very easy to do that. And I think if you're honest with your patients and you tell them the truth, they're going to love it because they don't really get that too often. I'm not going to get that from the 2 doctors I see this afternoon. Maybe I will. But I doubt it.
There's no shortcuts to success. Now, for a dentist who wants to start building a higher value practice this year, what are the first steps you recommend?
Create a vision. What does it look like? And work backwards. And that create a vision what you'd like your practice to be in 10 years. Then look at 5, and then 3, and 2. What does it look like? Create all the steps to be there. And very importantly, find a mentor. Find something who has what you want and ask them to mentor you. Now, a lot of people think that I can't help them because I'm so busy. So people will call me and, or they won't call me. I go, why didn't you tell me that? It happens in the office all the time. All these problems are happening. And, I said, how come you didn't tell me you're so busy? Well, I go, I've already done this for 40 years. I've seen that problem. I go, I'll help you. And what I found over the course of my career is when I go up to somebody, who's on the stage or something like that, who's really well known, or who I really respect, and I ask them for help or their phone number, 90% of them give it to me. They'll say, I can't talk to you now, but here's my cell, call me, and they're more than happy. The great people are more than happy to help you out. Not all of them, but most of them. And I have a lot of experiences. Danny Meyer is one of my mentors, who is the founder of Shake Shack. He also owns 50 of the top restaurants in New York City. He's a billionaire from Shake Shack. And about 8 years ago, I reached out to him, and I wanted him to come to a dinner at one of his restaurants. Now, he's got 50 restaurants. I never thought he'd respond. Well, I walked into the restaurant, and the maitre d' comes over to me, and Danny says, I'm sorry, Danny can't be here, but he wanted you to have his book. And it was a signed autographed copy of his book saying, to Mike, to hospitality in the dental chair. And today, my book, on the cover of my book here, Danny Meyer wrote, and it's right on the cover, it says, Mike's higher calling is to use hospitality gifts to make people feel better. His lessons apply to any customer-facing business. Now, Danny Meyer is the most successful restaurateur and hospitality in the world. And he did that without knowing me, just because I emailed him. And when I emailed people and I have over 170 endorsements of my book from well-known people in the dental field, like John Coyce and Dennis Tarnow and others, Christian Coachman. But I reached out to a lot of the people in hospitality. I reached out to people like Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins wrote back. He goes, I'm sorry, I can't endorse your book. I only do 1 or 2 a year. But thank you for reaching out. Now, Tony Robbins, he's a billionaire. He lectures all the time. I mean, he's one of the most well-known people in the world in education. And I found like a lot of these people did right back, which was amazing. So find a mentor, create a vision, and look around and see what you want. And you want to talk to me, give me a call. I'll give you some advice, something like that. 203-209-7029. I mean, it's on the bottom of all my emails. I'm very easy to get. And I find that the greats are easy to get. And if they don't respond to you, then I realize that they're not always their word. And there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there. And today, a lot of people learn from social media. They're on Instagram. They're looking at these people that are walking along the beach, or, it's a beautiful concert, and, hanging around with all sorts of cool people. I mean, that's not reality. That's not reality. Most of us go to work the same way every day, and we have to deal with the same stuff. And I have like 2 or 3 study clubs that I'm involved in. And these very successful people get online. I was on one on Monday with some really top periodontists in the country, in the world, actually. And they're complaining about their hygienist. They're complaining about not filling their schedule because of the snowstorm, in the down south. It's the same issues that we all have. And these guys don't even need to make any money, but they're still complaining. We're all caught up in that like self part. And that's why it's really important to develop a group. And one other thing I'm going to recommend. Find 5 or 6 people that have the same situation you have and say, let's form a study club. Let's talk about it. How can we become more successful? And some of the things that you do, in your organization, you just bring them in there because we all have the same problem. So
exactly. Amazing advice, amazing nuggets. I'm pretty sure our listeners listening to this would like to get in touch with you. I know you shared your contact details, but is there any way else that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, my name is Michael Sonick, and Sonick, and just go to michaelsonick.com. I have 2 websites. I have one for the practice, which is also my last name, but michaelsonick.com has all the courses I do, the education. I'm going to give you a few places to go, because whenever I teach, I don't want to be able to teach and leave the room and not give them anything. I would read. You can get some of the stuff is all free online. There's a lot of material there. My book is $14 on Amazon. It is pretty much a guide to how to build a successful practice. At the end of each chapter, there are 3 or 4 pages that ask you some questions so that you can look at your own practice and determine if you're doing it the right way, like decor or showtime or customer service. If you go to YouTube, on my YouTube channel, I have 250 videos. They're all free. They come out. You can follow me on Instagram. I put a lot of this material out every Wednesday and Friday. So there's a lot of customer service nuggets. My strong recommendation is that you sit down with your team. I recommend Wednesday in the middle of the week, you buy them lunch and you have them watch the video, which is 8 minutes. And then you'll see that within months, your practice will change just by listening to some of the things that I talk about. Now, it's like getting a little motivational coaching in your practice. You want to take it to another level? I have a whole video series where you have 10 modules, and you can become credentialed in a people in that patient's practice. It is about 4 or 5 hours of training. It comes with a workbook. And once you fill out the little form in the test, then you can put the little logo on your site. But more importantly, do this as a team and take about 6 or 7 months to do it. And each week you can work on different aspects of your practice. And my team does it, even though they're working my practice and they've been listening to me for 30 years, but they're still doing that same program. And our customer service changed. We actually have somebody in our office that we call Chief of Hospitality. They're there just to give everybody a great experience. And it's been amazing. I also can come out and coach and speak and all that other stuff. So my email is mike@michaelsonick.com. But that's all on my website. But there's a tremendous amount of information. You don't need me to come. You can just do it on your own. Because like my mentor says, I want to provide more value than the money I receive. I just give a lot of value out there. And this business that I'm working on now, and coaching and teaching stuff, is busy. I'm busy every weekend. But it's not like my practice, but my practice is 40 years old, This is slow, and I'm not pushing it. I'm not going too fast. I'm taking it slow, and I see this slow organic build. And that's how it has to be with your practice. It does take time.
Exactly. Amazing. I mean, for any of you listening in, of course, the resources, the bundle, everything will be on our show notes of this episode as well. You can go ahead and check it out as well. So Dr. Sonick, thank you for sharing your insights and experience today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Lester.
So the key takeaway from this conversation is simple. Practices that lead with quality, education, and strong leadership create value that insurance cannot define. That value allows dentists to regain control of their time, care, and profitability. So if you are ready to take action and you are looking to do a health checkup on your online visibility or on your website, you can start by scheduling a complimentary marketing strategy meeting with Echo Marketing at lessinsuranceDependence.com/ marketing-strategy-meeting. If you're looking for mentorship, you can also book a complimentary coaching strategy meeting with Gary Takas at thrivingdentist.com/CSM to get personalized guidance on building an insurance independent practice. Now, all these resources, all what we shared in this episode as well, all complimentary, can help you towards a stronger and more independent practice. So if you found value in today's episode, please share it with a colleague or a friend who could benefit from reducing their insurance dependence. And thank you for spending your time with us today. I look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode of the Less Insurance Dependence podcast. Until then, keep moving forward towards a thriving independent practice.